We're now public comments. The maximum allotted time for each speaker is 3 minutes. Clarification of information presented and answers to the questions specific to district business and educational matters will be posted on the school board's website under the section called For the Record. Please be reminded that profane, abusive, or slanderous speech is not permitted. To be specific, in doing some review of policy, I've noted that the appropriate policy to include and to refer to is Board Policy 5517.01, bullying and harassment. The board is committed to providing a safe, secure, positive, productive, and nurturing educational environment that is free from bullying, harassment, and abuse of any kind for all of its students, employees, and volunteers. The board encourages the promotion of positive interpersonal relationships between members of the school community. Since we are all here in this meeting and this audience for the same purpose, this applies and I believe displays a great model for our students that may be watching. I request that you speak into the microphone, state your name. I'll call speakers up in order. First three looks like Tech Sergeant Berger, Scott Waldesouza, Richard Charbonneau.
Good evening. My name is Pauline Berger, and I'm here to speak to you in regards to an incident and policy procedures at my daughter's school. Walk out in front. I don't know if you noticed as she walked forward, maybe something a little bit different about the way she dresses. We have addressed this with the school. It is not in their policy that she cannot wear it or that there is a danger to anyone. However, during phone calls that I received at work and conversations with my daughter, she was aggressively approached by the administration as to that she needed to remove it, but no one would give me a reason as to why. So I'm asking for a resolution of this matter, that it be made known to the school that, or to us, that it is allowed or not allowed. It is not harmful in any way. I was told repeatedly that it is damaging, but they would not tell me to damaging to what. I was told that it was, they tried to curtail students from wearing anything that would bring them negative attention. It has not brought her any type of negative attention, and she's been wearing it for probably about 2-3 years now to the various schools that she's attended. She's unique, she's different, she likes to express herself in many different ways. I was told by the principal specifically that she would not come into my house and tell me how to run my house. However, she could not, my daughter would not be able to express herself freely at the school, but she was welcome to express herself freely at home. So I'm asking for a resolution, a final decision, something, because I have the rules here, and there's nothing here that says she can't wear this.
We can't opine on that right now. The superintendent will have somebody research that and get back to you.
Okay. We've been asking this question for a while.
Can you, if you can get maybe Mrs. Theddy, if you can get information, or area superintendent could get information for the superintendent so we could look into that.
Okay.
Yeah. We cannot address that. We have to have staff research it, and they'll get with you on what the issue is and what the reasons are.
They wouldn't give me a reason.
Well, we're directing them to do that now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. D'Souza, D'Souza, I'm sorry.
Good evening. Thank you so much again. My name is Scott D'Souza, and most of you I will probably see next week and all of February, the beginning week of February up in Tallahassee as well. I'll be meeting with the Education Committee as well as the Competitive Workforce Act, standing and lobbying for that, which would take care of half of the problem that I foresee coming around in Brevard County schools. I don't know if many of you are familiar with a civil rights publication called The Advocate. The Advocate has just now dated that the #2 place in the United States for females and ladies, same-sex couples, is Palm Bay, Florida. So I just want you to be aware that the idea that changing the non-discrimination notice to include sexual orientation and gender identity is a necessity here. It is a necessity for not only our students, but also for the employees to be protected at school as well as off campus. Brevard County is massively changing. We have got an amazing amount of new and greatly intelligent engineers and architects and rocket engineers and everything else under the planet coming here. We want them to be able to be comfortable here. I want to sell them real estate here. I have a stack of emails, correspondence, just since our last, since your announcement in December, from men and women alike, same-sex couples asking, where is this? Why isn't it in the school board documents? Why isn't it in there? What can we do to help get it in there? Hence the reason I'm headed up to Tallahassee to try and take care of it from another perspective as well. But I do want to make sure that this is addressed as soon as possible. I do understand that you have, Dr. Blackburn, you have inherited quite a few big battles on your plate, and this happens to be one that since October of 2014, it has only been brought up once in your for the record documents, okay? And in your for the record documents, it was only brought up on a bullying basis, which has nothing to do with the inclusion of sexual orientation and gender identity students into our school system, and the protection of the employees of Brevard County Schools as well. So thank you very much. I hope you all have a wonderful time in Tallahassee, and if you get a chance, come find me.
Thank you. Nick. Yes, Dr. Black.
Just wanted to say that I've targeted the February 9 board meeting to bring that information up.
To bring that policy recommendation?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Next up is Rich Charbonneau, followed by John Zwick, and then Kinley Nagel.
Richard Charbonneau, Satellite Beach. I found it, I'm just switching gears here a little bit. I found it quite interesting, the idea about the clinics. I've thought about the clinics for over 10 years now. Other than the fact that Brevard's a really long county, I think it's a fantastic idea. I think I'm older than everybody here. I'm probably 100 years old now. Back in the 50s and 60s, I lived in a town where General Electric was the main employer. And they had 50,000 employees. And if they can do it with 50,000, you can do it with 9. But they had a monster clinic at their main plant. And it was, I remember my grandfather went to it for 40 years, and it was well accepted and really well respected within the group. It also cut down on the call the ambulance and go to the emergency room, because that's expensive. Somebody cuts their finger or twists their toe or something. So what they would do was just bring them over to the clinic, and do what they had to do there. Now, obviously there were some things that were more serious than that, but this worked well, and I think it'll work good for you. And the idea that you're going to include the other towns into it, I think that's a great idea also. So I just hope it works good for you. The only thing I have is just the distance from Sebastian to Titusville is a long haul. Even with 3 clinics, you're going to have some traveling time in between them. But for GE, anyways, and 50,000 people. Now, granted, times were different in the 50s and 60s, before most of you were born. But it did work well. So that's that. I came up here to talk about. I think you all know that I'm not an education expert, but I am an expert in criminal justice and abnormal psychology. And I met with Dr. Blackburn this morning. We chatted for a few minutes, and the few minutes could have been longer, but it was my fault. I had the timer on my cell phone set wrong. I noticed that you have some schools that are failing schools, and not education-wise, but psychology-wise, it's been proven over and over and over again that throwing money at poverty and throwing money at minorities does not fix the problem. The problem is that in these minority schools, 75% typically of the kids are growing up with no father figure at home. And that's the problem. The problem is not a matter of money. Doubling the amount of money to the school isn't going to make a father come back to that house. What has worked is a mentor program, a very strong mentor program. And that's what I'm recommending, that you really take a look at a strong mentor program for those at-risk schools. And I know my time is running short, but
your time is up.
Not being one that's not willing to put my mouth where my money is, I'll volunteer, and I've got a few friends that will too. But the mentoring program, I think, will work.
Thank you. Next, John Zwick.
Good evening. My name is John Zwick. I live in Vieira, Florida. A good driver that direction, just on the other side. I came before the board tonight and the superintendent to ask that you all earnestly consider a procurement policy for local businesses. Wrong page here. Particularly for the construction projects that are now being selected via the surtax referendum, where you introduced a half-cent tax referendum. That generated local funds. Now, during the Great Recession, many of the local construction firms faced some very difficult times in trying to get work, not only locally, because there just weren't projects there, but when they went out of county had local policy preference selection, and those local firms, our local firms, were rejected out of county. In 2010, I believe, it was brought by one of the board members here, not you, but one of the board members at that time, to consider a local preference policy for procurement. The school board asked the director of purchasing to look at that policy, and the local director of purchasing came back and indicated that they couldn't do that because the funds were state funded. That was before this tax referendum and before a lot of tax dollars were being collected by local firms to fund these projects. And I'm not saying that was bad. I think that probably was right, the right thing to do. However, over the past several months now, 7 of the 9 advertised larger construction projects that went out for selection were awarded to non-county firms. The most recent example of that was some presentations last week by a firm. I'm running out of time here. Welsh & Associates. The Welsh company finished second. They were 1.25 points behind the first firm that was out of county. There were 5 firms selected for shortlist. Welsh company was the only local firm. They finished at 433.75 points out of 435 points. So I don't think it's a question of being qualified whether or not they could have done the job. And
Thank you. Your time is up.
I think the board needs to just consider a ladies first when you open the door, or a piece of pie for the local firm. Thank you very much.
Next up is Kinley Nagel, followed by, I'm probably going to mess this up because I can barely read it, Mark Cleary, sorry. Followed by Richard Smith. Mrs. Nagel? Is she here? She was here. Okay. Then Mark Cleary.
Good evening, and thank you for the time. My name is Mark Cleary. I am the non-custodial parent of a student at Palm Bay Magnet High School. I have had an ongoing issue with that school for the past 2 years, which I'm not going to legislate here in front of everyone and wasting everyone's time, regarding my son and his academic performance at that school. The school has resolutely refused to address the issue. I asked Dr. Mullins, the area superintendent, to address the issue. He kicked it back to the school. When we got Dr. Blackburn last summer, he expressed an interest in listening to the community, listening to the stakeholders of the educational system here, offered to be everybody's friend on Facebook, et cetera, a dramatic departure from your 3 predecessors. So I'm now your friend on Facebook. I sent Dr. Blackburn a letter describing the situation to him in brief, asking him to address it. He kicked it to Dr. Mullins, who miraculously agreed to meet with me. That's an hour of my life I'll never get back. Dr. Mullins not only refused to address the issue, he turned a discussion about my son into a discussion about his children. So the week after that meeting, I sent another letter to Dr. Blackburn requesting a meeting with him. And soon after we got back from winter break, I got a call from Dr. Mullins' office, once again offering to meet with me. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing twice and expecting a different result. I'm not going to change my position. I'm sure Dr. Mullins is not going to change his. I'm here to, once again, and in person, request a meeting with Dr. Blackburn to address the issue of my son. He's a senior. I'm out of time. He's getting ready to fail his senior year, and I'd like to do something about it.
Thank you. Mr. Richard Smith.
Good evening. Richard Smith, speaking for Brevard Federation of Teachers. I've got a couple of thoughts just came to me. I know you guys wonder sometimes if I pay attention back there in the corner, but I do. And
Yeah, we wonder.
got a couple of thoughts for you. First of all, I'd like to offer to introduce Dr. Blackburn to the several of the FEA lobbyists. There are 17 of them in Tallahassee, and perhaps that could help us combine efforts. And I know you're struggling with this issue, and this might be a short-term bridge. We can talk about it. Secondly, perhaps more money can be saved with the drug testing by the district if a common sense policy can be applied with the drug testing of employees not be automatic. If a student walks up to a teacher and smashes a stool over their head, the teacher gets a drug test. And so we kind of think that that might be a waste of money, so we perhaps look into that. Be glad to answer questions or talk to you guys afterwards. Now to my prepared statement. In recent years, legislators have shifted hundreds of millions of dollars into programs with little or no accountability that serve students in private schools and those operated by for-profit educational management companies, while at the same time cutting funding for public schools and ratcheting up standards and accountability measures. These changes in the state's education system move Florida further and further away from the constitutionally required system of free public schools. One of the several Florida voucher programs, the Florida Tax Credit Scholarship Program, provides private school scholarships by diverting corporate tax revenue from the state's general revenue fund to a scholarship funding organization. The legislature initially capped the program at $50 million in tax credits per state fiscal year, but the cap will expand to $873 million in 2018. Voucher schools are largely unregulated, don't have to follow the state's academic standards, don't have to hire qualified teachers, and don't have to prove to the state that they're using public money wisely. Only a small number of students who attend low-performing schools can get vouchers, and the quality of these schools isn't tracked in any meaningful way by the state. Florida's taxpayers and students would be better served by investing scarce resources to improve our lowest-performing schools and helping all the students who attend them. There is no link between vouchers and gains in student achievement. There's no conclusive evidence that vouchers improve the achievement of students who use them to attend private school. A recent study in Louisiana showed children in voucher schools are doing poorer in every subject. Vouchers undermine accountability for taxpayer dollars. Private schools have almost complete autonomy with regard to how they operate, who they teach, what they teach, how, how, if at all, they measure student achievement, how they manage their finances, and what they are required to disclose to parents and to the public. Vouchers do not give parents real educational choice. Participating private schools may limit enrollment and in many cases may maintain exclusive admission policies and charge tuition and fees far above the amount provided by the voucher.
Sorry, Mr. Smith, your time is up.
Thank you. I'll be glad to sit down now.
Next up is Darcy Otto. Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Darcy Addo. Florida Administrative Code says that each school district has to set rules that establish purchasing rules, and that their rules have to follow at least the 15 rules that are somewhat exhaustive. One of the 15 rules in the Florida Administrative Code says that there are certain things that are exempted from competitive solicitation. People who know me know that I balance our family's budget on 2 teacher salaries, so I have a really hard time understanding why anybody would ever want to buy something without trying to get the best price. I shop with coupons, I put weekly circulars. It just makes sense to me that you would try to get the best price for something before you buy it. So it brings me to like a basic truth that I operate on is that just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. And in this case, just because something is legal doesn't mean that it's fiscally responsible. So, for example, on tonight's agenda, there's an item G47, and I was looking at the A attachment. It looks to purchase 2,325 handwriting charts, charts that go on the top of the blackboards, at a cost of a little over $33,000. And I thought that was sort of interesting because I spend a lot of time in parent-teacher stores, so I just kind of was doing a little bit of math. It's also interesting that it's almost $2,000 in shipping fees. I never pay shipping for anything, so it's just kind of interesting. And the contract says that Brevard Public Schools hasn't paid for these since 1988. Now, I've been in our public schools since 2002, and I thought, I can't really be suggesting that those handwriting charts are the same handwriting charts that are in there since 1988. So I thought, I wonder if we did like a needs analysis and actually checked with our schools to see, do we need 2,325 of these, or are we just buying them? So I just wanted to kind of bring that up for discussion. I thought maybe schools had used school improvement funds or box top money or had other creative solutions to replace these. And I truly couldn't imagine why we would replace all of them assuming that we needed them. So first, because that cost seemed really high, I got on the Google and did a little Google search. And I found that this purchase order is for the full retail cost, $13.47, which is the full retail cost from Pearson. And again, frugal, I don't pay full retail cost for anything, so I can't figure that out. And then I found similar products, different brand, but similar products, ranging anywhere from $7.99 to $10.29. So again, doesn't make sense to me. And then I called a local retailer who sells the almost identical product for $6.99, no shipping cost. And because it was such a bulk order, that local retailer said that there would, of course, be a discount. So my request is, my ask is, just if we could consider the idea of putting in a policy that is more fiscally responsible and
Thank you. Time is up.
requires competitive bidding. Thanks.
The board wishes to thank this evening's speakers. Your willingness to speak to the board is appreciated. I will quickly speak. I don't think Mr. Zwick is still here. The local preference purchasing policy, I did bring that up many years ago. As a school district, we also fall under Department of Education rules, and there are some additional purchasing guidelines under DOE rules that make that virtually impossible for us to do, even though we do see our commission districts and our municipalities doing it. Department of Education limits our ability to do that. And to the last speaker's issue, I'm wondering if we can't print those up ourselves in our own print shop. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but that's an interesting thought. Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to? Yes, ma'am.
On Mr. Zwick's concerns, Mr. Theodore, I know you and I spoke very briefly earlier about this, and I'm wondering if you could perhaps get something out to the board letting us know, is that something that is a possibility with the sales surtax fund separately? What would be the considerations there? Just so that we can all have an understanding of where we are and what the possibilities are. And then, Dr. Blackburn, I'm assuming that you will be following up with Mr. Cleary's issue?
Yes, ma'am, I will.